So in today's video, I'm going to show you how to print out your Procreate artwork and get great results on a printer that costs just $50. I think this illustration here will make a pretty good first example, and this is something I painted in a separate video a couple of weeks ago, so if you like this style, I'll put a link to that video in the description. The printer I'm using today is just a Canon Pixma 410, but as far as I understand, all the Pixmas have the same print quality, so you could use any model. And once I've cut it out, we can look at it closely. I think the quality here is pretty amazing, especially considering it's such a cheap printer. However, because we're using watercolor paper, the results end up a little bit dull. This may not be an issue depending on the kind of artwork you paint, but I do have a solution to the dullness that I'll cover at the end of this video. So this artwork here, it's not mine, it's just stuff that I've bought, and I think it does make a good example because I know these were printed professionally. And I think if you hold them side by side, you can see the quality of the prints I made on the Pixma are only a tiny bit less. I'd say mostly the difference is like resolution. If I look closely, I feel like it's kind of like 8 out of 10 compared to the professional print. These differences disappear though if I just stand back. I think from at least a foot away, I couldn't see any difference between these other than, of course, the texture of the paper. For me personally, I've always preferred warmer toned paper, and that makes the watercolor stuff perfect. And with all that said, let's move on and go through the whole printing process step by step. The first thing you need, of course, is the actual artwork itself. And I paint everything in Procreate using this kind of watercolor style. And if you're curious about that, I've got a few hundred videos on my channel that explain the process. But one thing that's common in all my videos is that I'm always painting on a canvas that's 4,000 pixels by 5,000. I think if you always paint your artwork on a canvas at least this size, you're going to have no problem getting great prints at pretty much any dimension. Now this size here is pretty big. It's actually much bigger than the actual paper I'm printing on. I'm just using this 200 GSM A4 size watercolor paper. And what I need to do next is create a separate canvas in Procreate that exactly matches the paper size. And it's also important to keep the same color space. So kind of an easy way to achieve both of those goals is to just start by exporting this artwork as a PNG. And I'll just save it to the iPad. After that, I'll go back to my gallery page and I'll import a photo like this and just import the one we just exported. And the reason I do it this way is because it makes sure that we have the same color space in this document as we did in the original. After that, we need to change the size of this document to exactly match the size of the paper. So to do that, I'll go to my wrench, I'll go to Canvas, and then crop and resize. I can go up here to settings, and I can set the size here in pixels. Now, since my paper is A4, I need to make this document A4 at 300 dpi, and I won't go into all the technical details with that. Basically, if you just Google search something like what is A4 at 300 dpi, it'll give you a pixel dimension like this, and this is what we need to type into Procreate. Then after that, we can just click Done. And you can see it crops our artwork, and this is fine. This is just what I mentioned earlier about the artwork being too big. It doesn't matter because we can scale it down. I'll turn off the cropped artwork, and then I'll go to the wrench again, Add, Insert a photo, and I'll reinsert our cactus image that we exported. And you can see this time it's scaling it down to fix the smaller artboard. So I'm just going to mess with the scale and the position here and try to line it up. There we go. And this next step here is optional, but if you remember earlier with the first print that we made, you might have noticed that the colors on it were a little bit too cold or bluish. So if that's something you want to fix, it's really easy to do it. Just open up the layers panel, make a blank layer above the kind of inserted artwork. Then you can choose a pretty saturated yellow tone, and I'll drag it so it fills that whole layer. We basically just have this kind of yellow layer above our artwork, but I'm going to change the transparency mode to color. There we go. Then I'll lower it to 0, and then slowly raise it back up just until it slightly warms up those colors. And this will counteract any of the cold effects you might get when you print. And since there isn't really a way to connect a Pixma printer to the iPad, we have to export this artwork to a laptop or some other computer and then print from there. So to do that, I'll just go to my wrench, share, I'll share this as a PNG, and I'm just going to airdrop it to my laptop. But of course, if you don't have AirDrop, you could just email this file to yourself. And over here is the file that we just exported. And on my computer, I can just double click it and it will open up kind of an image preview like this. Then to print it out, I just go to File and then Print. Before we print though, we need to make a couple of small changes. First, I want to make sure the paper size is set to A4, which is the same size as the watercolor paper. I want to make sure the preset here is set to Photo on plain paper. Down here at the size, I want to set it to fill the entire paper. This makes sure it will print at the correct size. And then down here under printer options, we can kind of mess with the quality, and I recommend changing it to high. And then I'll just click print. And there we go, here's the final result. Now it's normal at this point, maybe to look at the print and see some issues with the colors. If that happens to you, you can just go back to the iPad and kind of adjust it a little bit more and print it again. And just like I mentioned before, I think like these prints turn out a little bit faded because of the paper. So there's a little bit of a trick I do sometimes that can help that. Basically, I'll just use some random clear lacquer spray paint and just lightly mist the print. I feel like this brings out a lot of depth and makes everything have a little bit more contrast. And as a last tip, some of the Pixma printers have a common issue that I haven't seen anyone else mention. And basically, it's called print head alignment. So if you're printing out your artwork and you look really closely and you see this sort of faded, ghosting, kind of misaligned effect, what's happening here is that the printer isn't calibrated and it's printing the different colors slightly offset. This is really easy to fix though. You can just Google Pixma printer print head alignment, follow those steps, and it will fix this issue in 2 minutes. And I think that pretty much wraps it up. As always, if you think I've earned it, please give this video a like. And here are 2 more illustration tutorials for Procreate that I think you'll love to watch next.